You're constantly told to be financially responsible, save more for retirement, spend less on luxury goods, and that looking poor is a good thing. But can we really afford for everyone to be financially responsible? As we look at the current state of the American consumer, we can see some shocking trends. Credit card delinquency rates have hit the worst level since 2012, according to the Fed. New data published by the Bank of Philadelphia Federal Reserve shows that a growing number of Americans are struggling just to make their monthly credit card payments as they continue to battle higher and higher inflation and interest rates. All stages of credit card delinquency, even the 30, 60, or 90-day past due, rose over the fourth quarter in 2023. But the share of debt that was either 30 or 60 days past due also rose to the highest level since 2012, when the Fed began tracking that data. Mortgage delinquencies 60 days plus past due also increased 16% year over year. While the overall delinquency rate is still very low compared to the historical average, the pace of new loans entering that delinquency picked up and some loans moved into the later stages of delinquency. The resumption of student loan payments, robust personal spending, rising balances on credit cards, and other forms of consumer debt, paired with declining savings rates, are likely behind some borrowers falling behind at the end of 2023. The percentage of car loans going into early stage delinquency also rose 7.7% at an annual rate in the fourth quarter, a level not seen since 2010. More auto loan borrowers are falling behind on payments, and loans opened during 2022 and 2023 are so far performing worse than the loans opened in earlier years. Perhaps because buyers during these years faced higher car prices and may also have been pressed to borrow more at higher interest rates. A record number of people are paying $1,000 or more for their monthly auto loan payments. And it's not just because of higher prices either. There's also been a big trend amongst auto manufacturers towards bigger, more expensive trucks and SUVs, with the U.S. automakers having all but abandoned the small car market. With all of this financial stress, it's no wonder that 62% of Americans are still living paycheck to paycheck. The average adult living in the poorest 1% of zip codes spends almost 5% or $600 annually of their income on lottery tickets, while 46% of Americans say they don't have $400 to cover an emergency expense if that were to come up. It's clear that many people are struggling and have made some poor financial decisions, but do we really want everyone to be responsible with their money? Are the financially reckless inadvertently supporting the economy? Here are 3 reasons why you don't want people to be financially responsible. You need others to be irresponsible so you can afford to buy a home. Buying a home in today's market is not achievable for most unless there's a market correction. I purchased my first home in 2009, which is right after the '08 financial crisis. The home was a foreclosure from the previous owner and allowed my wife and I to buy the home at a really good price. It is unfortunate that the previous owner had to go through that financial stress, but the change in market conditions allowed myself, as well as many more first-time homebuyers, to buy their first home. This is a chart of housing affordability, and you can see the red line which peaks soon after the market correction, like it did in 2012, when house prices fell due to the '08 financial crisis. The banks were irresponsible in accepting loans from those who shouldn't have qualified, and homebuyers were also buying homes beyond their financial ability due to the low interest rates and the lax lending requirements. Others need to be financially irresponsible in order to capitalize on the stock market. Volatility in the stock market creates millionaires and great stories. Stories like Keith Gill's, perhaps better known by his YouTube username Roaring Kitty, was, until late 2020, a relatively unknown financial analyst. He traded stocks on the side as a hobby, occasionally uploading videos about his positions and stock picking strategies up to YouTube. Gill's story was made into the film Dumb Money in 2023, which depicted how he makes a big bet that spurs his followers to rapidly invest in GameStop, turning Wall Street upside down. Roaring Kitty turned his $53,000 investment into over $30 million and inspired a horde of investors. Keith's investment wasn't the irresponsible one. In fact, most would argue that the hedge funds who were shorted GameStop stock made the irresponsible move. By shorting the stock so aggressively, it cost those hedge funds billions of dollars in losses. This financial irresponsibility created some millionaires and a great story that will be told for generations to come. One of the most legendary investors of all time loves when others aren't financially responsible. Warren Buffett is famous for building cash reserves to be positioned when there's an opportunity to invest in companies that he determines to be undervalued. This was the case during the 2008 financial crisis when the Oracle from Omaha pumped $5 billion into Goldman Sachs shortly after Lehman Brothers collapsed, a massive boost of confidence in Goldman that shored up the stock price. Buffett bought $5 billion of preferred shares and, as a part of the deal, won warrants for an additional $5 billion worth of common shares. In 2011, Goldman bought back preferred stock for $5.6 billion and handed Buffett $500 million bonus. Buffett exercised the option on 13.1 million common shares for a value of about $2.07 billion. If everyone was financially responsible, we wouldn't have some of the most iconic companies, their products, and the employment opportunities that were created. Some of the most successful companies are founded during recessions. Hewlett-Packard got started in 1939 when GDP dropped 10% and unemployment was around 20%, making it the third worst economic downturn in the 20th century. Today, Hewlett-Packard employs over 55,000 people worldwide and is valued at over $31 billion as of May of 2024. My mom worked for HP for over 40 years and was considered one of the best companies to work for, especially while Bill Hewlett and Dave Packard were still leading. In 2009, companies like Uber, Airbnb, Venmo were all launched. It's moments like the 2008 financial crisis that create better solutions. If the banks, rating agencies, and homebuyers were all fiscally responsible, then we may not have some of the most recognizable companies that we know today, including the products they make, the jobs they create, and the stock market returns that they produced. Financial irresponsibility among consumers can lead to several negative outcomes, including significant impacts on the environment and the quality of goods produced. Here are 3 specific examples. Overconsumption of fast fashion. Financial irresponsibility often leads to impulsive buying and overconsumption, particularly in industries like fast fashion. Consumers frequently purchase cheap, trendy clothing that are worn only a few times before being discarded. This practice results in increased waste and pollution, as the fashion industry is one of the largest polluters globally. Textile production requires vast amounts of water and energy, and the disposal of clothing contributes to landfill waste. Demand for low-cost products. When consumers prioritize low prices over quality due to financial irresponsibility, manufacturers are pressured to produce cheaper goods. This often leads to compromise in the quality of materials and craftsmanship. For instance, electronic devices or household appliances made with inferior components tend to break down more quickly, leading to a cycle of frequent replacements and increased electronic waste, further harming the environment. Unsustainable agricultural practices. Financially irresponsible consumers who seek low-cost food options also contribute to the demand for inexpensive agricultural products. This demand can lead to unsustainable farming practices such as overuse of chemical fertilizers and pesticides, which degrade soil health and pollute the water sources. Additionally, to keep prices low, some producers might exploit labor, paying workers insufficient wages and subjecting them to poor working conditions. This exploitation not only harms the environment but also perpetuates the social inequalities and reduces the overall quality of life for agricultural workers. Now that we know why we don't want everyone to be financially responsible, there is someone we need to be responsible. The US government is changing the US dollar forever, and you need to know how this impacts you. Watch this video next to see what's replacing the US dollar.